Hey, Byron.
Hey Jeff, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Pretty good. Can't complain all that much.
Yeah, this is interesting times for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, interesting is a word. I don't know if it's the most accurate word, but it's definitely a
Yeah,
word.
it's a
One of
word.
the
It,
many.
and it definitely is an adjective.
Yes. It has a place in a sentence, I can tell you that much for
hmm
sure.
What we met, what is it, like 12 years ago now?
Something like that, yeah. I think the first year I was there was 2006, I think, or 2007. And I think
Yeah.
when you started the year after I got there, right? Or a
Okay, yeah,
semester
yeah.
after?
Something like that. Yeah, I started in 2008. We talked before about you had moved out to California.
Yeah. Yeah, I started when I moved out to California, I decided to uh just go kind of back to what I kind of felt comfortable with because I felt like I was doing a lot of very strictly classical stuff and it was a little bit draining on me physically and mentally. So I wanted to go back to something that felt a little bit more like what I wanted to do, what I wanted to listen to and what I wanted to hear. So I just decided to start writing music again and I just yeah, so I started out just making stuff with myself with my cello and just Ableton Live, writing music the best I could with that. But I've kind of learned a lot along the way, and it's a fun thing to kind of put alongside the normal playing that I'm doing as well and the practicing.
Totally, totally. Yeah, how much was like classical a part of your development coming up and learning cello and everything and all that?
Oh, like when I first started playing music, if I have to go back, I never played. I didn't play any instruments, and there was no classical music at all in my house growing up. It wasn't until I got to elementary school when they had the school run orchestra programs. So I auditioned for it because I thought the cello looked cool. So I was like, all right, let me give that a shot, and I ended up sticking with it. I just really loved it.
Nice.
But I didn't really have any classical music in my background until maybe high school or later when I started actually playing in orchestras and really starting getting into it. So yeah, for me, most of my life was been around R&B and
Mm,
gospel and hip hop, a lot of hip hop, and then there was also some punk and metal and hardcore around in the grunge the era and all that stuff. So a lot of just
nice.
popular music in general was what drove me for a long time. But I was playing classical music, so it was kind of like balancing two worlds. But now I'm kind of going back to that world. I'm kind of not separating them anymore. I'm trying to put it back together.
Mm-hmm. How is the distribution as far as work going out there?
Work is really slow at the moment. When I got here, it wasn't so bad. I started out, I moved over to California cold. Like I didn't know anybody. It just happened kind of on the spur of the moment. My girlfriend, we were living together in New York and things were going pretty well there. I was getting a lot of gigs and was doing a lot of good work and the stuff I was really getting into. But then we had an opportunity to move over here for her to get a better job. And we were planning on moving over to California at some point anyway. So we were like, all right, well, let's just do it now. So I kind of made a cold move over and had to look up a lot of contacts that I have in California. Luckily, I had a fair amount of people that I knew and just kind of worked my way into the scene there. So getting stuff in the scene was starting to work out pretty well, and I'm meeting some really good people. And but then the thing that's been holding me over right now is the teaching. So I have 7 students that I teach regularly, 7 students a week, and that's been good. They've stayed with me the whole time. I switched to Zoom and Skype learning, so they're picking up pretty good. So that's basically the work now. That and a couple of Facebook Live concerts, a couple of like Zoom concerts and things like that where I get tips as well.
Nice, nice. And have you thought about like getting more work outside of the arts industry to kind of balance out these times, or just trying to stick mostly to kind of more arts work and as far as teaching and performing goes?
Yeah, I feel like I was thinking about that, especially before I moved to New York, and the whole time I was in New York, I was looking for other work aside from music because I really wanted to try to uh, just have a different career in total. but it ended up being more difficult than I wanted it to be. But I kept with it for a long time, and I tried to start learning things about different things, like looking into different careers and things I might be interested in. Did a lot of applying and everything, but at the end of the day, I ended up getting more work as a musician, and I really enjoyed the work as a musician. So I just thought to myself, if I can survive and I can push and promote myself and become my own business, work with the connections I have, and continue to make music that I love, it will work out. Like people can survive playing music alone. I can do it. So I decided to really put all my eggs in that basket and just run with it. I've done a lot of stuff in the past. Like I was doing like Uber Eats, not Uber Eats, but driving Uber and Lyft
Mm.
for a while. And but I think as far as trying to look into other things, I think it just kind of broke down to me as to do I absolutely need to? Because if I absolutely need to do something, I'll absolutely do it. But right now, I'm kind of in a holding pattern. There's stuff lined up. I have work that I could be doing and stuff I could be growing. It's just on hold right now. So right now, I'm in a holding formation, continuing to do these things, and hopefully, I'll get more stuff out of it after things hopefully clear up. But if not, if things start getting dire, there's always work somewhere. So I just start looking for that. It's weird. Like it's just like I feel like as soon as things started to take off, that's when COVID hit. It was like if there was a worse time for things to happen,
Mhm.
I don't know what it would have been. I mean, maybe right when I moved to California, probably would have been the worst time. But luckily, I had a whole year to like get to know people and everything, so it was a little bit better. But like my brother's wedding was actually the weekend everything started getting shut down. His wedding was in Miami, so we all flew to Miami and we were there. And then like the beginning of the week, they shut down. Like they were just like, "This is a real thing. Everybody, go home." And then we were like, "We're already here for a week." So then the second day, they started shutting stuff down. Third day, it was like they lost their wedding venue. Fourth day,
Mm.
they lost their second wedding venue. Then they ended up having their wedding on the beach, which was great, but it was just kind of like so nerve wracking
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
terrible. But we
Yeah.
made it back and we just went inside and didn't talk to or touch anything for months after that.
We had to make such a sudden shift, a sudden change to making everything live through online performances, online teaching. Um, I don't know, looking at that, like, what do you think are some things that you hope would stick around as far as maybe the future model of being a professional artist post pandemic? What of the tools that we've kind of developed now during this time do you think will endure and maybe develop into something more substantial?
I think my favorite thing right now is online teaching, and I thought it would be difficult, and I thought that I would have a hard time explaining things, but it for some reason it just worked out really well. It just feels like uh, if we can do some improvements maybe on the way that calls are connected, the sound quality sometimes, and if I could get different angles, there's some way to do that. But it seems to be working pretty well, and I'm able to teach very very regularly. I don't have to leave my house, which is fantastic. I'm very much a inside person. I don't like to go out. I like to stay inside. So if I can teach from home, I would love to do that, or at least to have that be more of an option. So I have two different teaching agencies I go through. One is a brick and mortar school, and then we switched to online when everything happened. And the other one was already online, not online, but it was through an online service. So I would just go have door to door. And so those also switched over. But some of those, I was like, if I can just meet like once a month to do the lesson in person, and then the rest of the time do it from home, I would love that. It would save me gas money. It would save so much time, and I could just get back to doing the other stuff once I got done teaching and really be able to, optimize my time to really, really, really well. And then, other than that, maybe just people washing their hands. I think just being aware that people are aware that they should wash their hands. I think is probably another big one for me.
It's just been surprising how effective you can be doing online lessons.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I can't really do well online is telling people how to create sound. So for me, sound on cello is like you have to be there feeling it, because that's one of the things that I learned from Scott, because he would always teach and he would go on stage with you and like grab your bow and have you sit there and he would make the sound for you so you could like feel it resonating in your body and like, oh, that's what I want to try to create. So it's hard to give that idea to somebody through a screen.
Yeah, I can do that. Like it was actually, I think it's making all of us teachers better at our jobs because we have to really explain things so clearly.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of the things I realize that I get away with a lot of times the pieces that I have not writing in measure numbers, and we're just kind of like, oh, start here, or do this thing. And now that I don't have measure numbers, I was like, all right, we have to put in measure numbers. I can't say the third row down, fourth measure in, the first note of that. It's so annoying. I was like, I got to write in measure numbers. Now I have to do it. And then the other thing is using your words, like being able to describe something, coming up with adjectives to describe something or how sound should be. uh, yeah, I've gotten a lot better at that just because of this as well. Yeah.
But
So I mean, I think about the way that I was raised and my relationship with money and the way I think about things is my parents were always very adamant about me doing something that I love, which
mm,
is which is always was always interesting to me. They would always tell me to follow your passions and do the things that you love because that's how you find happiness. So for me, the pursuit of happiness never included money. I never think about money when I'm thinking about what makes me happy. And so it changes the way that I approach the world, and it changes the way that I approach and the things that I take as being the things that I need to do. Whereas someone might say it's like, oh, I have to go out and I have to get a job, I have to do these things. My idea is that if I can find happiness, that's the most important thing. And right now, money is like near the top, very much the top of the happiness thing. So that's what I'm pursuing right now. But at the same time, I'm very happy with my life. Like I'm extremely happy. Everything else about my life is fantastic. Money comes, it goes. You can have a lot of it, you can have terrible small amount of it, but nobody's kicking me out of anywhere. I can still eat. I still got music, and I still have all the stuff that I enjoy. So why should I be unhappy? So the empty space. When I was actually this story goes back a little bit. So when I was in at USF with you, the first I went to my first what I would call summer camp or
mm,
summer festival, and it was the Cello Farm up in Salem, New York. And Scott Cluckstall invited me up there, and I met uh, Judith Gordon, and I met Rhonda Ryder, who I ended up studying with. But I didn't even know at the time there was a luthier living maybe like 5 miles away from there, who's we actually, when I moved to Boston, became a very prominent fixture in my life. His name was Jeffrey Ovington, and we got along swimming. I love Jeffrey Ovington. He's so fun, but he was a great cello maker and great maker of instruments, and I learned so much from him. And I ended up going to his barn a bunch of times and meeting his wife, whose name is Bonnie. Well, not his wife. I believe it's a life partner situation. I don't think they use the term wife, but Bonnie and we got along as well. She's very, very natural person, very much out in the woods. She communes with the trees, like she does. She, is centered and does all these things, very spiritual. And we're both kind of feel like we're kind of like interesting spirits in the places that we're in. But we continued to talk through all the time that I knew her and all the time I was in Boston and when we were in Texas as well. And then Jeffrey Ovington died of cancer a few years ago. Um, and we played his funeral, and I talked with her multiple times. And then when I went back last summer, I even talked with her more and just hung out, and we had a great long conversation. We've been extending emails and things. And so I was talking about the fact that I was writing music again. And she sent me a poem. She sends me poems every now and then that she wrote called The Empty Space. And I love the poem. So I was like, can you send me a sample of you reading your poem for me? And she's like, yeah, there's actually like a song that goes along with it too. So I was like, all right, cool. So she sent me the song. She sent me her singing the song and then saying the poem. And then I
mm.
wrote all the stuff around it. The kind of that poem gave me, the feelings that poem gave me.
There's a dance going on in the seemingly empty space between us. There's a dance going on in the seemingly empty space. Invisible weaving, sinews of the warp, our auras extend beyond our edges, weaving in and out so that we are always touching everything. Fibers of the floor reach out in all directions, the continuum of matter. It was a strange day when I discovered that I could not touch my arm, that my hand passed through unobstructed by flesh and bone. A strange day when I looked out my window at the great maple and the space between the leaves was solid, the leaves themselves, the empty space. Our fibers extend and intertwine. Invisible, unconscious partners cross the floor, cross each other's paths, collide, embrace, pass through. Rays of light, shards and strands, each cord umbilical, connecting all destinies so that there is no way to know where I leave off and you, or the tree, or the concrete block begin. Mutually agree that we are all separate, that we hold the spatula in our hand, to flip the eggs in the frying pan, on the stove in the kitchen, in our house, on the street, in the city, by the river, on the earth, in the sky, which all too soon becomes what we all agree is outer space. There's a dance going on in the seemingly space between us. There's a dance going on in the seemingly empty space.
That was a fun one. I think it was interesting. I was talking with her about just what I was thinking about the song and just the idea of writing something, because I remember she said something to me that made me just instantly connect with her. And we were talking about, this was after I left the quartet, and she was just saying, I was just like, I just wasn't feeling it. I just felt like I wanted to dance more. She said, it's like, yeah, it's like, if you can't dance, then what's the point? And I was like, you know what? It was so interesting to hear her say that. I was like, so it was interesting, the dance going on, and that's why I chose that poem, because I thought it was kind of encapsulated our kind of thought process a little bit.
Yeah, and I like at the end there when you almost could hear that modulation as we leave the atmosphere.
Yeah. It was interesting. I feel like as I started to write more again, because I was a composition major for like 3 years in undergrad. While I was doing a dual major, performance and education, and then I was performance and composition, and then I was just performance, because I was like, all right, I'll just perform. But I composed for a while, and I just completely stopped because I hated everything I wrote. I would always write something, and I would look at it, and I'd just be like, this is garbage, and ball it up and throw it away, because I was so self-critical. But now I feel like that has kind of disappeared for me. So I just write what I like. And my going theory right now is like, if I like it, if I can groove out to it, and if I find something amazing and wonderful about it, and I thought about it in a way that I think is, if somebody else found out the underworkings of how I did it, they would be impressed as well, and they would find it interesting and cool as well. I think that's all that really matters to me. So I'm not writing to any standard except for what I like. I remember I wrote down in my journal, like when I was an undergrad, my only goal is to make music I like with people that I like. And that's remained true for me. Like I feel like that's my goal in music, is to make music that I like with people that I like. And I think I've done a pretty good job of doing that so far. So I just keep up with that. And then there was one more thing, which was Jennifer Boersi. Did you ever meet Jennifer Boersi? She was a cellist. She might have left before you got there. Yeah, she might have left after my first year, maybe. But she was at the cello farm too, and I've talked with her multiple times. And one of the things that she said in a lecture once was that a job that you take should have 2 of 3 things. It should be either lucrative, rewarding, or fun. So it has to be 2 of those things. If it's only one of those things, it's not worth doing.
art is how a culture metabolizes the times we're living in.
Yeah, I like that. Art is how we metabolize the world we live in. Interesting. Yeah.
And it's how we process what's happening, how we distill the essence of what it means to us on a human level, and how it's then expressed in an eloquent and meaningful way.
Yeah. Usually, I think, and that really goes into your definition of what makes music good or what makes music interesting to you as well. Because I kind of feel the same way about it being. Um, I think the word I would use is a concise, like a distillation of a scream or an echo or a feeling into a certain amount of time or into a certain space. Yeah. So it kind of says a lot about what your desires are. This COVID has kind of broken out a lot of stuff. And I think about it because, like, I try to think about what I did when it first happened. The first thing I did was kind of stopped playing for a little bit. Like, I stopped playing for like 2 weeks. I was just like, well, whatever. But eventually I was just like, I just started writing music because I was like, I really want to write something today. And I started writing music, and then I started trying to tape. I started recording my video game plays. So I want to try to make like a video game channel. So just like stuff that I was like, man, now that I have time, what do I really want to do? This is the only time I've ever really had that opportunity, because you've always got to work. You've always got to do a bunch of other things. But yeah, it's an interesting time. So it's interesting to see what people are coming out with at this point in time, and then who's not coming out with anything. Who's kind of just like, I've been working for the last 10 years. I'm just going to sit back. I definitely understand that as well. So
How's been the kind of like the mental health impact from all of this happening?
yeah, I mean, it was pretty rough, especially when it happened. Like I think I'm with a lot of people where it was just kind of like we had that very high stress, high, like very low feeling, like gut wrenching feelings. It's just like for weeks, and then eventually it kind of subsided, and you got a little less nervous about things. And you try to settle down and kind of work yourself into the new normal, and then there was the whole thing with the Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd, and that killed me. That destroyed me for an entire month. I couldn't do anything. I was bad. I couldn't write. I couldn't play my instrument. I couldn't pick up my instrument. I was done. So it's been really rough for me. But in those times where things are great, they're great. Like I feel like I'm with somebody that I love a lot, and we're just enjoying the fact that we just have our time to be together. Because usually she has to leave and go into the city during the day, and I'm at home doing all my work alone, and then she gets back and we have a few hours, and then she's got to go to sleep and then wake up and go again. So her week is so hectic. But now that she's working at home, it's like we see each other so much. It's a wonderful thing. Like I think I'm just like very happy in my domestic situation right now. There's a lot of good going on. I think there's still a good amount of communication. I think even though Zoom and Skype aren't ideal, they are a decent substitute. They can help. Because I remember when I was doing long distance, like having FaceTime was like such a game changer. It made everything so much easier. Like to be able to be face to face with somebody and hear their voice and see their reactions and talk to them in that space. Like I feel like even though we're clearly in different rooms, I do kind of feel like I'm sitting across the room. It feels like a conversation I would have with you just sitting across. Like we went to the museum last time I was in Tampa, and we just kind of talked for a while. It's the same kind of thing. So
That's still the sticker from that museum.
Is it?
It is.
Yeah, I remember that. That was a cool exhibit too. Like my big thing right now is that I feel like video games have had equal amount of influence on my artistic life as music has, which is strange. And I feel like I'm equally fluent in video games as I am on the cello, because I think I've put probably an equal amount of hours in over my lifespan.
Yeah. Have you ever looked into how they do all the 16-bit music composing?
Oh yeah, I have. I've heard quite a bit of it, and especially in the past. I've been on a kick of playing 2D games lately, so I've been buying all the really good 2D games off of the PlayStation Store. So there's one game called The Messenger, which has an amazing score, and it's all 8-bit. But what's interesting about it, half the game, it's not really a spoiler because you see it in the trailer, but half the game is in 8-bit, and then at a certain point you get the ability to travel forward in time, And so in the future world that you go to is in 16-bit. So the graphics change from 8-bit to 16-bit. And then also the music has, so every stage you can go through a time warp and do the same stage in the past or in the present or in the future. And when you do it in the past, it goes instantly to this 8-bit world. And then it goes, when you go through the portal, it's the same world, but reimagined in 16-bit with 16-bit music instead of 8-bit music. It's pretty amazing, yeah.
What's that called again? What's the name of that?
The Messenger. Like one of my favorite games is Bloodborne. Have you ever heard of Bloodborne before?
I've heard of it, yeah.
It's an amazing game, but an amazing story as well, because it has a lot to do with H.P. Lovecraft and the idea of like unimaginable beings. And one of the amazing, which kind of goes into the circle square kind of thing, one of the amazing mechanics of the game is that as you're going through it, you get these things called insight, or madman's knowledge. And when you collect the madman's knowledge and consume it, you gain insight. And the insight allows you to understand what's going on around you in real life. So you have the understanding of a human being. So as you gain insight, you can see what's going on around you that you can't see. So you start to see monsters like hanging on buildings. And the more you get, the more you understand about what's actually going on. You can see the different monsters that reside in this world that you wouldn't be able to conceive if you had not consumed this insight. So it becomes this very interesting, like, how can you describe something that's undescribable? So as you start to eat it, you start to understand it as a human being. It also can drive you crazy. So it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, what are some other things you've been up to? Other games you've been playing these days, or shows or movies?
Mostly I think movies wise, it's been a lot of horror movies, because Allison loves horror movies and she got me into them too. So now I watch all the horror movies too, good or bad. I'll watch them all. So that, and then TV shows like Umbrella Academy, Atlanta, watching Money Heist, which is a Spanish show on Netflix. That was pretty good. So I think we finished that. But we've been cycling through a lot. We were watching Hannibal, watching Avatar: The Last Airbender. I had never seen Avatar: The Last Airbender before, and I honestly think it might be my favorite cartoon of all time now. Yeah, I've been converted. I think it's one of the best things ever. One of the best cartoons ever made, I think.
It's always gotten a lot of accolades for the writing and how they developed the characters throughout that.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, I'd heard about it in passing, but I'd never really taken the chance. But when I actually sat down and started watching, I was like, this is fantastic. I was like, this was on Nickelodeon. It's a kid's show. I didn't know about it, and yeah, now I know. So I'm a huge stan of the show now. I try to tell everybody about it because I think it's one of those shows that you can enjoy at any age. You can get something out of it because it's just that well done. Okay, so this was something I wrote for the Bushwick Book Club. So Bushwick in Brooklyn, New York, they have a book club. They also have a chapter in Oakland where the idea is that people gather as a book club, except they don't talk about the book. They write songs about the book. So there was a book called The Hidden Life of Trees. So I read that book and I basically made a report about it, but the report is a song. And the song is called Slowly Does It, because there's a chapter in the book about how trees, a lot of the book is about how trees, not to anthropomorphize them or make them into human beings or like that they have feelings in that way, but to say that they do have an ecosystem and a thought process, and they do have ways of defending themselves, and they do get scared, and they do have these reactions. They're not the way that we would have them, but they're different. And one of the chapters was about having younger trees that are underneath the big tree. The older tree will stop that younger tree from growing by blocking out the light so that it has time to grow out instead of up, because if it grows up too quickly, when things go down, it's weaker and it can fall and it can get destroyed more easily. But if it stays low and gets wide first, when that bigger tree dies, it has a better chance of surviving and making it into the top of the canopy. And so this was a song that I wrote from the perspective of the mother tree to the baby trees underneath it, or to the seed underneath as it's getting ready to start growing. So I haven't written lyrics to a song in a long time. So this is the first time I've written lyrics to a song, and the first time I've sang while playing in probably 5 years, but it's something that I used to do a lot. So it was an interesting experience, and I was happy with the results.
branches will cease to bear leaves. The light will flood, you'll grow and bud. I'll watch you from underneath. I'll see you catch the light and arise to the heights that I once knew. And I'll rest gently beneath your canopy, returning to soil and feeding your roots.
All right. Well, we've gone a good long time. Again, thank you so much for your patience sticking with me. Any other things you have going on? Do you want to kind of promote any projects or where people can find you?
Well, I've got there's Cello Madness Festival. I'm going to be playing on that September 10th remotely, of course. Then other than that, there's not much more live stuff. But I will be releasing music periodically over the next few weeks for sure, because I've got some other pieces that are being wrapped up at the moment and some collaborations that are being wrapped up. You can check that out on my Facebook page or on my website, www.byron-hogan.com. Or my Instagram, which is Byron Hogan, or at Hoogbeats, HOOGBEATS, and then also on my SoundCloud, which I believe I sent you a link to as well, so you can include that. So yeah, there's a lot of places to check out what I'm doing.
That is SoundCloud/Byron-Hogan. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. It's like I don't get to talk to you very often, but it's good to see your face and get to hear from you for sure.
Yeah, I'm glad things are going well out there. Hopefully we'll be able to catch up in person sometime not too long from now.
Yeah, let me know if you ever get out, you decide to come over to the West Coast. If everything dies down, we can get together.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, take it easy, stay safe, and stay sane. And
yes, same to you.
Look to talk to you again sometime soon.
Indeed. All right, talk to you later, man.
All right, take care. So what I wanted to share with you also, and this kind of is my ulterior motive of doing this podcast, is as a way to kind of document my journey transitioning into computer programming. But I just wanted to kind of share with you just to get a little geek out a little bit on what I've been doing.
Sure.
Here's something I put together using just what I've learned so far with the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. There's lots more we're going to learn about, but those are kind of the three of the holy trinity of web development. The HTML is the content. You could, using just HTML alone, it's made like, a text page and just have all the text there. It would look kind of boring, but it would be text. That's kind of HTML and what you do there. CSS is how you style it, and how you do all the formatting and the fonts and other kind of dynamic things too. And then JavaScript kind of has more to do with making it more active. That's kind of where having like apps would work. So let me show you kind of my portfolio project that I've been working on. It's still in development, but here's how it's looking at this point. So we have here just a nice front page. But anyways, that's kind of just the first start there. We also have learned about, here we have a nice contact page, and this actually is cool. You can submit this, and this will actually be sent to my email. Tech can apply to so many things. Unquestionably, there's got to be a way to apply tech to arts as well. And oh, by the way, here's another little example of our flex boxes. Here's on a small screen and on a big screen. Again, these are just trying out these concepts, so a lot of fine tuning. And that's kind of my other motive too, is take all this fun learning and help use it to create a more robust online learning system. And so I've started that here with some good old note reading stuff. This will be nice information for beginner students, reading the treble clef and the bass clef and all that good stuff there.
Nice.
And eventually I'll make it more interactive, little drills and exercises to help with. Here we kind of can follow the models of a lot of people who have already been doing this thing, and they're far ahead of the curve now. But also here's kind of the thing that I think is most nerdy, but also really fun too. I have programmed using JavaScript a scale building tool here.
Oh, snap.
And so you can choose what scale you have. Say you want to have G natural minor, and then you will build G natural minor scale, or D harmonic minor. And there you go. And so yeah, this is
great stuff. I feel like I could have used this when I was doing a lot of work with intonation, because I did like I would do like just intonation charts and make them out and do matrices and stuff. Like this would be fantastic for that.
And so yeah, I mean, all finding ways to take what I'm learning and apply it to music, to art, and if I can find that, and hopefully when all this wraps up for the boot camp, we find some work out in California, LA, and something where I can and maybe ride that line between arts and tech, and that would be an ideal outcome for me. But anyways, I just wanted to kind of share this.
And that was all from a week of the program?
Well, this kind of came out largely from there was a 1 month prep course where we covered the basics of HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And that taught me enough to kind of pull this thing together. But the formatting, this looked much more boring before this past week. It was quite plain. There wasn't any kind of responsive formatting there as far as how things can scale in the menu. So each new lesson I'm learning, I'm kind of updating it more. So that's just kind of what I've been working on.
Nice.
And we'll kind of go from there. But anyways, that's kind of one of the things I wanted to also take advantage of, is share what I've been working on, because there's nothing like trying to explain what you're doing to someone else to help make sure you kind of understand a little more.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, and I'm thinking about it more now. Like maybe I should, just get back into the programming part of it, just like learning a little bit more about it. Because that's really cool.
Thanks.
And I think it reminds me of, because I did my website on Wix. I did my website on Wix, and I guess it's like a dumbed down version of what you're doing. So you're actually doing like the in and outs of it, but it's kind of like the simplified version is the Wix, where they make it like, just click this and then we'll take care of all the difficult stuff for you. Can I see the script? Yes.
Here's what went on behind. So
I love it.
So here we have a little function which will convert the pitches to a degree name. Now this one is kind of outdated. This was an early version where you would type in what starting note would be. So this kind of accounted for. There's so many ways to refer to C#. You can use capital letters, dashes, spaces, call it D flat instead of harmonic, but it's still the music scale degree of 1.
Okay.
This is kind of now a little obsolete. I've found other ways with that pull down menu, which was a new learning thing. So this one not so useful anymore, but we also go the other way around. We can take our chromatic degree to pitches. So for scale degree 0, output, hey, that's a C, or 1. That's a C sharp or D flat. This is how I put out, when you select, I want to create this scale, how it puts out that name. It's just pulling from here and putting them in the right order. And that right order is going by our thing here. This is just simply a little library storing for a major scale you go by, and 2 is whole step. So whole step, half step, whole step, and then whole step, half step. That's our step pattern to construct a major scale.
Okay.
And here are all the pictures. That's kind of what I graphic-wise would display, the pictures of all these scales. But here's the actual thing that does the work, the function to build scale. This is when you click that button to build the scale. This is what clicking the button does.
Okay.
You take in those values you set from the starting scale, the starting notes. So it's a C scale. That's a C. It's a C major scale. And then you get the picture that matches that scale. You start, this is an array which says, it's just basically what's going to help you output the list of the note names. And here it kind of goes through whichever appropriate scale pattern of steps we want, whether it's major, natural. And you see I've also prepared to incorporate the modes as well.
Oh, nice.
But again, that's going to be a lot of making things with Finale and editing them and uploading all those images. But that's, the behind the scenes stuff. And then just spit out our desired scale right down here.
Nice.
So yeah, getting very nerdy, very into it. But again, it's called an immersive. So we're doing 50 hours a week. That's like a full-time job right there.
Yeah. Very heavy. Lots of hours. But yeah, it's fun stuff. Like I love the technical aspect of it. I was hoping you were going to show me some script. And I was like, is he going to do it? Yeah, fine.
I got script.
Yeah.
These skills are going to be so useful to help us improve and enhance our online teaching tools, and just so many of the fields use them too.